In this video, guys, we're going to show you how to hook up an auger to your tractor, and stay tuned to the end because we're also going to show you how to line up the auger and dig a perfect post hole. Sometimes what looks like the simplest part of a job can take the longest time to do. And that comes into play a lot when you're switching out 3-point hitch equipment. Taking it off is usually fairly easy, but putting it back on sometimes can take quite a bit of time, a lot of frustration. And if it's a hot, sweaty day, by the end of it, you're just over it. You don't ever want to do it again. But hooking up a post hole auger is a totally different animal than regular 3-point hitch equipment. And I'm going to show you how to do that today. The first piece of advice I'll give you about hooking up anything to your 3-point hitch is to back up as straight as possible. And for a post hole digger, I always leave mine vertical. Right here, you'll see it tied to the post here on this pole barn. And the reason I keep it vertical is that makes it easier to install, and it also keeps the fluid from draining out. If you were to lay this on its side, it might leak through maybe the fill port or some of the other seals. And then the first thing you got to do back here is take off your top link, because you don't use a top link on a post hole auger. So you take that off completely. You will use the pin in the back here against the tractor. But this right here, you can put off to the side for now. Now ideally, this part that goes to the top link will be spun around here. Let's see if we can do it without this falling over. I've got it up here with some pretty good wire, but I need that facing this way. Some of these augers actually come with a kickstand so that they'll stay upright. Oh, this one wants to fall. While I got it like this, I'm going to make sure my PTO shaft goes on. I keep this off now. It's a 2-piece shaft like all PTO shafts, because one time we had left this in the woods and we had left the PTO shaft together and we weren't able to get it apart. We actually had to hook the PTO shaft to a chain on the tractor, and we actually took it off from the post hole auger and hooked a chain to each end, one end to the tractor, the other end to a post, and pulled it apart. But it didn't pull apart easy. I actually had to beat it with a sledgehammer and just keep working it, and it took probably 30 minutes or 45 minutes to do that. And we wanted to put up a fence, so that really wasted a lot of time. So now I take all my PTO shafts apart and store one part inside. And if this ever needs cleaned, you can, put a wire wheel to it, but usually you can just put a little grease on here and then take the female side and put over top and just move it back and forth, and then it'll move easy. And the easier this moves, the easier it is to hook it up. Just going to take a little bit of grease, put here inside the female side, and then fit it together. And if it slides easy, then we will be in business. And if you didn't know this, these only go together one way. And I can't tell you how to look at it and tell, because there's 3 ways that it looks like it'll go, but it only goes one way. And if you're like me, it takes you trying all 3 ways before you get it right. You just keep turning it till it fits. Just do that a couple times, and once you get that loose like that, then you can take it and attach it to the tractor. What you don't want is this to bind up, and then you'll be fighting it the whole time you're trying to hook it up to the tractor. To make this process easier on myself, I take this off. With one pin, I take this off of this top link of this auger, and that way I can get this part onto the tractor first, and this is easier to put on second. I've just learned that over the years, if you try to put on the bottom ears of that on your lift arms, it just makes it really hard to line this up, especially if it's bent. And I'm pretty sure mine's bent if I remember correctly. I can be hard on equipment. Again, I'm just spinning this around so it'll line up. This particular tractor has 3 holes that you can hook up this top link, and the Summit tractor that we have here on the property only has 2. And what I found is if you put it in the top hole, it raises it too high, and this will actually impact this bar right here, which Kubota puts there to hold your toolbox. I've moved my toolbox, but I bent the heck out of this bar by having that in the top hole. You can see the 3 holes right there. That pin is in the top hole. I would recommend, if you have 3, to put it in the middle, and if you only have 2, I'd go ahead and put it in the bottom if you can get it in there easily. you'll notice on this Kubota here that the top of the PTO, that cover right there with the it's like a guy that's wrapped around a PTO shaft, but that might interfere with that going into the bottom hole. So we're probably going to put it right there in the middle hole. Now for things other than a PTO, there's actually a science to which hole to hook up your top link. And for ground engagement equipment like a disc harrow or a plow, I think you want to use the lower one. And for like a brush hog, I think you want to use the top one. But your manual on your tractor will tell you which one you should use for different ground engagement equipment. So I've got to get this straight up and down or else it won't go in there. And sometimes that's a problem. And I'm making this video because I struggle with this, as you can see, and I assume that other people do as well. And I've actually had several comments or suggestions that I make this video. So I figure while I'm putting it on today, I'll go ahead and film it. And it's just one of those things. It doesn't go on fast. And don't get frustrated with it. Just kind of make sure things are lined up. And once you get that pin in there, you're golden. It is, you're out of the danger zone. You don't have to worry so much about is it going to fall on you, because that'll keep it from falling over. And now the rest of it's pretty simple. Before I go any further, I'm going to put on the PTO shaft. And I just took off the forestry mulcher off here, so the PTO shaft is not rusty at all. It's not really lubed, but it's pretty clean. And that's kind of the hardest thing, or the biggest thing that people find when they're putting this on and it won't go on, is that their PTO shaft coming out of the tractor might be rusty, and then it's hard to get the implement slid on there. And Kubota, fortunately, has a freewheeling PTO shaft, so you can line up the splines and push it right on by turning the splines on the tractor side. So this looks like it's going to try and go on fairly easy. There it goes. There's a positive click when it lines up. So then we'll put the cover down, and if your tractor doesn't have a cover that moves like that right there, then it can be difficult to put in your PTO shaft. But luckily, Kubota has one that hinges up. Now you'll notice I haven't run the tractor at all. I parked it here, and everything I've been doing with the tractor off. All right, that goes like that. Been a hot minute since we've used this post hole auger, but we're about to use it a lot because we got some fencing to do. So it's good to getting it back on and make sure everything's working good. I'm putting it on today to plant some blueberry bushes. So now that's on, and I can take this pin out. Now that I got the pins on the lower lift arms on the bottom, I can see that the paint is scored here, so I apparently keep this in the middle. And now it's just a matter of lifting it up and putting this pin in. Now we're all hooked up. I can take this wire that's holding it to the post off, and it's hooked to the tractor. It's not going anywhere. And these aren't real secure on here. I'm going to tighten up the lower telescoping arms a little bit to make it a little tighter. But a post hole auger is not a precise instrument, as far as it's going to have some wiggle back and forth. So I tightened up the turnbuckles down here in the lower lift arms, so now it's got a lot less play. Let's see if it'll turn, because it hasn't turned in a while. Looks good. Let's go dig a post hole. So this is a post hole digger, and this is a post hole digger or an auger. And you can kind of just drop this wherever you want to dig a hole, and it might be in the right place, or it might move by a couple inches. And if you are putting in an exact fence line or maybe a decorative gate or something, you want the hole to be absolutely in the place where you want it, not off by an inch or two. And what I found is you can do a lot from the tractor, but sometimes you got to go back to basics. We've got a whole video out there where we demonstrate this when we were working on our fence a couple years ago. But what I do is I mark out where I want my fence post, and I dig it with the post hole digger, the manual one, and give myself like a little cheater hole there. And then I can back the tractor up. And we won't get into everything about digging a straight post hole, but as this goes down, it's going to go down at an angle. So you got to keep backing the tractor up. So it helps to have a spotter or someone that can tell you that it's not straight. But for now, I can just drop that in there, and because I'm pretty experienced with doing this, I can dig a pretty straight hole, straight down, and have minimal cleaning up with the manual post hole diggers. But that's gonna wrap up today's video, folks. We sure appreciate you watching. Check out the description below for the link for where we actually talk more about how to dig a hole. But until next time, y'all take care out there, and remember, life's short, tractor hard.